Hello and welcome. Kilian, why are you so small? There we go.
There I
Hello
am.
and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have my good friend and fellow hacker Kilian on to talk about the hacking news at the actual correct time that we usually are supposed to go on. A little bit of surprise for all of you. Got to keep you on your toes. So good to see that we already have a bunch of people in the chat. And before we even got started, we had what I consider to be a really excellent question. And even though this is the news segment, I still wanted to address it. How do you manage difficult clients on engagements? That is something I haven't had to do for a while, actually. And thinking back on it, it was one of the hardest things that I had to put up with when I was doing physical security and cybersecurity. So I used to work at music venues doing security there, and I got to audit several of them. And oftentimes the results of those audits were contentious, or sometimes the customer would just be very difficult. So Kilian, do you have any advice on dealing with difficult clients on engagements?
That's a good one. This could be a whole, I think, episode in and of itself. Some of it is just to be honest about the situation. Like if you find something wrong or a situation, put it in human terms, put it in their terms. I had an experience, this was many, many years ago, where an organization had a lot of sensitive data exposed, and they said, well, we don't really care. Okay, that's not my problem necessarily, right? But, you know, being a security practitioner and being just somebody who lives in the world, right? Especially dealing with sensitive data and the fact we talk about these leaks, I just put it back in human terms. I said, okay, that's okay. Like if this isn't a compliance issue, whatever it happens to be based on your policy, that's totally all right. But I said, and this got me a little bit of hot water, but it turned out okay in the end. I said, now consider we found the sensitive data, your sensitive data in this. Would you be okay with that? And that got very contentious for a second. And then they kind of internalized it a little bit and like, wait a minute, like, it might not be a compliance issue based on that, you know, and then put it in human terms. So sometimes that works if they're receptive to having an open and honest conversation. And sometimes you just kind of have to, I'm not very good at this, but kind of let it roll off you. Like if they're not willing to budge on something, you know, you have to try and steer them in the right direction, do your due diligence. But at some point you kind of have to say, this is your decision, especially in the case of like security contracting and things. Just make sure it's in writing. Hey, we've brought this up to you. We've understood and you've acknowledged that this, you're not taking action or whatever it happens to be to protect yourself. But you can't make a move if they don't want to. You just have to do the right thing, try and do right by them, and document it.
Yeah. So one of the hardest skills in cybersecurity is dealing with people. Just absolutely, I will say that. Like, I think that writing reports, interfacing with people, dealing with difficult customers, those are all skills that are in short supply and high demand. So when it comes to dealing with difficult customers, I personally have to accept that at a certain point they're hurting themselves. And while it's frustrating to work on a project where I know that I'm right and I know that I'm trying to protect them and whatever, at the end of the day, if they're not going to go for it and I can't win them over, arguing with them, getting kind of sinking to their level and getting like petty or like, you know, whatever else, it doesn't serve anyone. And if the engagement is already going to be limited by what they're willing to do, it's best to just get through it as expediently and as professionally as you can. And if you look back on the situation and you were going to have like your boss or someone else look at it, you would want them to be like, this person was completely ridiculous. You know, you did everything right. Like you were super polite to them. Like you explained everything. You just never want to engage with someone who's looking for that sort of engagement and is being contentious that way. It's just not worth it. So again, having worked in both physical and like cybersecurity, people don't like to hear bad news, especially if it costs them money and it's not going to actually like earn them anything. So driving the point home and like really like get like making sure they get it. Like sometimes that doesn't do the job. And instead a thorough report or some clear cut examples, like Kilian said, of human situations that they would be uncomfortable with happening. You know, if they don't take care of this, for example, might be something to do. So anyway, I thought that was a really great question.
It was. The other thing that I'll add too, and this is really difficult to do in business, especially if you're a small business or something like that. But sometimes you have to quote unquote fire a customer. And you know, if something's going wrong or they're not really interested, say, hey, listen, it doesn't seem like this is working out. You're not getting the value that you expect out of this, or you expect something different out of us. We appreciate the opportunity, but you know, maybe we should help you look for a different organization to do this or terminate the engagement. Very difficult to do. Not a lot of people can do it, especially I've never worked for myself. I've always worked for somebody else, so it's not necessarily in the cards all the time, but it's something to have that frank conversation with. If they're just going to be unhappy with you, it might just be best to sever the engagement, honestly.
Yeah, so our commenter Alejandro says that they would expand the scope in TOS. It was bizarre, and then apparently our advice was pretty much the same thing that their director said. So at least we're in good company on this. Sometimes it's, as I said, it's very frustrating to do something where you know that you're right and you know that you're trying to help them and they just don't want to listen to it. But like it's not always possible to get through that. Okay, so let's talk about some of the news this week. We got a lot of things to cover. And let me see if I got this up. There we go. One of them is the new video that I dropped this week covering the most coveted stickers at RSAC. And I immediately was attacked online for this, but not very hard. So what exactly is this video about? So I consider the most punk stickers to ironically be the Fed stickers that you can get at RSAC. You can find them nowhere else. And this is one of the only conferences where the federal government goes all in and creates these stickers that I think are like crazy. I think they're great. Some of them are like really cute. Some of them are very funny. And because they're not very active in other parts of the hacker community, I consider these to be like ultra rare stock to trade for more punk stickers as I go to the other conferences. Because like if you're the guy that rolls up with like 50 NSA stickers, they're like, where did you get these? That's really rare. So in the currency of stickers, these were some of my absolute favorites. I thought the NSA ones were very imposing. I put this one on my car, actually, and people have stopped tailgating me. It's amazing. It turns out that the ultimate way of getting people to maybe back off a little bit is just rep the NSA with a huge government seal. So all the NSA stuff was really great. You can see some of them here. But I also have to say that CISA did an amazing job. CISA had some of the cutest stickers. They are really relevant to the election coming up and also concepts that we talk about on Security Forward all the time. So finding stickers that were repping like MFA and a bunch of other concepts that we talk about. Yeah, secure our world. I really like that. So all in all, definitely check this out if you want to see my rundown of the absolute best stickers from the federal government at RSAC. And also, I wasn't totally sure what the secret squirrel reference was. I kept seeing it with the NSA, but apparently, if you work in a secure information facility or a SIF, then you are considered to be a secret squirrel. Kilian, did you know about this?
No, but I've used like Secret Squirrel Network talking to people as almost like a joke, where we have our little inner chats. But no, I didn't know it had to do with specifically working in a SCIF.
Yeah, so okay, the squirrel is a reference to a clearance level. It comes from the old cartoon Secret Squirrel. So if you work in a SIF, you're a squirrel or a secret squirrel.
Yeah, I knew the old cartoon, but that just shows that I'm an old person.
So anyway, I thought this was really fun. If you want to check out some of our new content on Security Forward, this was one of my favorite pieces to put together from RSAC because, as I said, I love these stickers. Oh, and then in the comments, someone coming for me, hackers have really lost their edge. Now they're simping over government stickers. They're rare, okay? You should see the stickers that I trade these government stickers for. They would make you blush. So I'll accept that. But yes, I do love collecting a lot of government stickers. Hey, my money paid for them. They're taxpayer funded stickers, so I might as well get as many as I can get. So I also just wanted to give one last shout out to the Layer 1 conference. It was amazing to meet so many people this weekend. Kilian, I'm sad you couldn't make it, but maybe the next one. Did you know that their badge was a fidget spinner? Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. And okay, there we go. So this is actually perfectly weighted in the center and has a little Hall effect sensor. And you can actually break this out of the L1, layer 1, like outline. And then this little thing right here is a fidget spinner. But if you leave it in, it's actually pretty well balanced and you can make the whole thing spin. And it's actually a persistence of vision, like a POV, like a screen, where these LEDs create a sign as it's spinning around, and it has a built-in RPM counter, so you can see how fast it's spinning, and it displays it on the little screen it creates while it's spinning. That's awesome. So cool. There's so much going on. Of course, nerds love, fidget spinners, so that was like pretty incredible. We had a bunch of people come to our booth, and one of them was Nemesis, who actually won our raffle, and I think that we owe her either a nugget or like one of these colorful pushins, but she shared these pictures on Twitter, and I just wanted to shout her out and say it was awesome having her there. We had oh, that's not us, but that was actually also really cool. But yeah, so if you haven't checked it out before, I highly recommend Layer 1 Conference. We'll be back again next year for sure. And if we met you there or at the after party where I got to play Hammer Jenga, I got a small sports injury. I caught my knuckle on the pavement as I was playing it, but it's about what you would expect. It's Jenga with 2x4s and hammers, and it was a lot of fun. So nice. If I met you there, then it was great meeting you, I'm sure, because there was nobody terrible at this conference. It was all wonderful people.
Alejandro said is going to send us a challenge coin. Those are pretty cool. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those, Kody.
Oh yeah, those are super cool. Those are super cool. Yes, I would love a challenge coin actually. I think the next conference we're all going to is DEF CON and Black Hat. But actually, Kilian, I was going to mention, have you ever heard of Tour Camp?
No, I haven't. This sounds like something that would be interesting.
Yeah, so Tour Camp is in the San Juan Islands, I think. Okay. Or it actually might be off on the coast, like right off the San Juan Islands. I'm going to have to double check. Okay. But it's like an outdoor cyber camp that looks so incredibly cool. Everybody that I've talked to about it has said that it's awesome and amazing. And it looks like I got our team accepted for a bunch of workshops there. So that's going to be at the end of this month. And I'm going to have a lot to report back on Tour Camp after we attend our first. I'm right now, EMF Camp is happening in the UK, which is one of my all-time conferences that I'm like bummed I haven't been to. So my little consolation prize, I shouldn't call it consolation prize, but like I'm making it to Tour Camp because I'm not making it to EMF Camp. And they're kind of like somewhat the same idea, like outdoor cyber camps. These are kind of more popular in like the Netherlands, like the UK, like they've got some of these camps. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it's going to be really super cool. All right, so let's get to the news this week. I know that was a lot of other stuff, but we have one story that I wanted to cover, even though it's all kind of still in flux and there's not a lot of details out yet. This is a supply chain attack potentially. Like that's kind of what the implication is here. And we later in the news are going to go through the Ticketmaster breach that's been talked about this week, where a lot of Ticketmaster information is out there, and it seems as though there might be kind of a nexus here in Snowflake, which is a company that offers cloud storage for a number of different very, very important customers. Like you might have heard these little mom and pop shops like Adobe, AT&T, Capital One, DoorDash, HP, Instacart, JetBlue, Kraft, MasterCard, Micro. Like these are all very, very large brands. So obviously, if they have a bunch of important customer data stored on this third party, then a supply chain breach would be a really big deal. So there was communication going on out that was saying like it looks as though customer accounts have been breached, but it doesn't seem as though, at least according to the statements from Snowflake, that this was a result of a misconfiguration or vulnerability, misconfiguration, or malicious activity within the Snowflake product. So the speculation here was like maybe there's some sort of problem that is making it so, you know, people are getting their accounts breached without doing anything. But it looks as though the statement seems to be that people are having their accounts breached like at an unusual pace, but it might not be because of a specific vulnerability, which again is a little confusing to me. So this is all happening kind of fast, and we're still looking for more details here. It's really obviously concerning though to see such a large like cloud provider be potentially involved in these breaches that are impacting really, really large businesses with absolutely massive amounts of customer data.
Yeah, this one's going to have massive fallout. I mean, Snowflake's such a gigantic platform, such a massive like data lake. You build your data lakes and all sorts of stuff on there, and data warehouses too. So there's a ton of stuff up in Snowflake as well. I mean, pretty much everybody uses them. They're massive. So I'm interested to see how this unfolds. It seems to be, you know, the implication that it's not a Snowflake issue. Just sounds like maybe potentially bad passwords or MFA not on some of these accounts that the users created, and it's a knock-on effect. But who knows? If this is a supply chain attack, this could be arguably maybe the next SolarWinds, maybe even bigger, depending on, you know, the amount of data that's here. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's so confusing because that would, you know, when you hear that that multiple of their customers are getting breached and that those customers are so large, obviously each one of those breaches is in and of itself its own incident response and its own incident. but it's confusing here because the current
Right.
statements seem to imply that like this is merely like their customers are being targeted rather suddenly, but not necessarily in response to anything that they have control over or anything that has to do with their product. So we'll see. A lot more information really has to come out for this story to make sense, but it is something that you're right could turn into a really big story depending on what the real details are here.
Yeah, I mean, this is without getting too much into it. This is the natural extension of what we've been seeing for years, with everybody adopting these cloud data platforms. And it doesn't matter if it's Snowflake or it's AWS or it's Azure. People are moving the massive amount of compute and storage up to these platforms out of the data centers. And it's just a matter of time for attackers to start pivoting there. When we've seen it for years of attacking these sorts of things, because this is where the data is. At the end of the day, that's what they're after. They're going to try and get it any which way that they can. And this is sort of bearing fruit now, really in a clear way, that the cloud providers are the new data centers. Just because, it's not in your walled garden in your data center doesn't mean it's not just a data center somewhere else.
So while the company's being pretty tight-lipped about what happened here, the threat actor is not. They are providing a statement as to what happened, and they apparently claim that they gained access to a number of other customers, including Anheuser-Busch, State Farm, Mitsubishi, Progressive, Neiman Marcus, Allstate, and Advance Auto Parts. They say that they bypassed Okta's secure authentication by signing into a Snowflake employee's ServiceNow account using stolen credentials, and then they generated session tokens to exfiltrate data belonging to Snowflake customers. So that sounds pretty plausible.
Sure.
So, quote, to put it bluntly, a single credential resulted in the exfiltration of potentially hundreds of companies that stored their data using Snowflake, with the threat actor themselves suggesting 400 companies are impacted. The threat actor shared with Hudson Rock's researchers, which shows the depth of their access to Snowflake servers. The file documented 2,000 customer instances related to Snowflake's Europe servers. And they even provided some screenshots here purporting to show what exactly happened. They said that a Snowflake employee was infected by a Luma-type info stealer in October, and the malware stole the corporate credentials to the Snowflake infrastructure, as seen in a screenshot shared here. So that whole chain sounds pretty plausible with the way that breaches tend to happen. Obviously, if you're going to make up a story, it would probably sound plausible too. But this is definitely something to keep your eye on, because if the threat actors' claims are credible here, then they had access to an absolute ton of data. And that many accounts, like hundreds of customer accounts, with each one of them being such a large business or potentially being such a large business, is an absolutely stunning amount of data. So you'll definitely be hearing more about this. So stay tuned. I'm sure more about this will come out in the coming hours and days.
James is on the Scarface plan to success.
Oh, what's the suggestion? First you get the data, then you get the, oh yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. What a plan there. All right. So, as soon going from like such a big breach to something like this seems like pretty small, but a critical Fluent Bit flaw impacts all major cloud providers. I mean, like the fact that this does impact so many different cloud organizations is definitely going to be something that causes a lot of updates and a lot of headaches, but this is something that is an incredibly popular, I believe it's like a logging popular logging and metrics solution for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, embedded in major Kubernetes distributions. So because this is a log4j style kind of piece of infrastructure where it's just all over the place, used in all these different projects, it seems as though this could be a potentially damaging vulnerability, considering it was deployed 13 billion times. So this is CVE 2024-4323, also called linguistic lumberjack. I'm sorry. I just have to look at the original. Is that really what they're calling it? Okay. All right. So it looks like it's still awaiting analysis. So there's no official number for the CVE or like how severe it is, it looks like. But it's critical memory corruption vulnerability introduced in version 2.0.7 and caused by a heap buffer overflow weakness in Fluent Bit's embedded HTTP server. The idea is that unauthenticated attackers could easily trigger denial of service attack. And it is possible to potentially do a more nasty exploit here, but it would take considerably more time. The immediate concern is that this could allow for attackers to do a denial of service attack. And that is enough of a concern that it is a definite patching priority.
Mhm.
So yes, if you are in charge of cloud infrastructure, this is definitely something you are going to want to be aware of, especially considering how many different projects this is potentially impacting. All right, next up, this is an interesting story of leaked data. So Bitbucket is a tool used to manage software pipelines. And when it runs, it generates artifacts. And some of these artifacts potentially contain sensitive information that could include like credentials. And that is exactly actually what happened here. So Bitbucket was generating artifacts that had AWS account information in them, and that was leaked as plain text Atlassian Bitbucket artifact objects that were apparently discoverable by just random people on the internet that were looking for them. So by like rooting around and finding some of these environmental variables that were exported in these plain text kind of like logs that were created when doing runs of the pipeline, threat actors were able to discover and then log into cloud environments. So sometimes the breach here or the leak of information is actually from a set of tooling that maybe is either exposing something by default, or you're not aware that you shouldn't be putting in like certain information into those pipelines. The official line from Atlassian here was, you shouldn't do that. And that this was not in line with best practices. So yes, the method demonstrated by Google is unusual for a developer to perform and goes against best security practices. Yeah, fair, but it does also mean that they're probably not going to fix it. So you are going to be responsible for making sure that you're not accidentally leaking cloud security information into your artifacts on Bitbucket, at least for the immediate future.
Right. Then something like this isn't even that uncommon. I mean, this is a particular case where when they go through the build process, it gets dumped out there. But we see this all the time, working like your developer saves something in, a script file or something like that, just puts the credentials in, or they put it in a text file, something like that. This is something that smart attackers know to look for anymore, because it gives you the keys to the kingdom. Mostly, especially in the corporate world, when we talk about like sensitive data, we're primarily talking about like PII, PHI, that type of stuff, credit card numbers, things like that. But the smart attackers know that a lot of organizations do some type of dev or build or internal software development, or a lot of them do at least, or they integrate with other things that do. So they have these type of credentials or keys laying around. So this is an easy way for organizations to fall victim if they're not paying attention. And I'm talking about it a lot. But one of the things that we like to show in a Copilot lab that we've done for our customers is show how you can use Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot to search for this automatically for you in your organization. And it turns up stuff all the time, which is bad.
Yeah, not knowing what data is potentially like exposed and leaking secrets seems like a pretty big blind spot. And it's coming back to bite some companies that are, again, using things that might generate logs that they're not keeping track of or not aware that are exposed. Oh, and did you say stolen credit cards? Well, guess what? We have plenty of that coming up in the rest of the news. All right, so Lockbit is now chiming in and saying that they stole data in the London Drugs ransomware attack. So we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. This is a Canadian pharmacy called London Drugs, and they are now threatening to publish the stolen data online after failed negotiations. So this originally shut down London Drugs online services, so people weren't able to pick up their prescriptions or get access to a lot of the information they needed for their prescriptions. But it appears that they are now pledging to notify the impacted and applicable privacy commissioners in advance in accordance with applicable privacy laws. At this point, though, it seems like customers are on the hook here for dealing with this breach when it comes to that information just being out there. At the moment, failed ransomware negotiations plus like a large amount of customer data, in this case stolen, mean that it will probably be published online in order to put more pressure on the pharmacy here. So I'm not sure if they were talking about exactly what information was available, but typically the ransomware group will publish samples of the information in an attempt to put more pressure on the business they're trying to extort. So we can probably expect to see an update on this, talking more about what types of information is being leaked, if indeed they follow through with this threat. Oh, okay. We
Oh,
haven't gotten to talk about this yet. Windows 11 recall.
I
Anybody in
hate
the
this.
chat have any opinions on Windows 11 recall, the new wonderful feature so that you never forget anything that you were doing on your computer, and neither does Microsoft, and neither does any threat actor connected to your account or with
Mhm.
the access to this tool?
I
Um,
hate
I'm,
this.
I'm
I cannot tell you how much I hate this.
So let's talk about embedded spyware, which
Yeah.
watches you and then purports to help you with, I don't know, your day or whatever. So Windows 11 recall is an idea that if you were to take a bunch of screenshots and feed it to like a onboard LLM or
Mhm.
something, you could ask it questions about what you were doing, or even potentially like recall something that is
Right.
important. So let's say that like, your computer shut off in the middle of writing a document and you're like, oh no, LLM, can you go back to that last screenshot that you took of what I was doing
Mhm.
and reconstruct my document? And it was like, sure. And you're like, you're a little genie. That was, I guess, what they were thinking when they decided to implement this. But obviously, people have some concerns. So, Kilian, you want to talk a little bit about this feature and then maybe some of the reaction that the community has had?
Oh my gosh. So it's funny we have this article because we talk about another one about another spyware company that sells this exact thing as a service. But basically, yeah. But that's basically what they're doing is on all of
Oh,
these
you mean PC Tattletale?
PC Tattletale. Yes, this is such a common like Microsoft has just productized and monetized right into the Windows operating system that like really obnoxious monitoring software for kids or whatever, where it's going to go through, it's going to take screenshots of everything you have up regardless of what's there. So if you have sensitive information on your screen or things that you don't want up, it's going to just screenshot all of that. I think there are some exclusions, like maybe if it's like if you're using Edge and you have an in private window and some other minor things, but it's basically just going to screen cap everything you've got up and store it for search later. There is no use for this. Like sometimes I accidentally close a browser tab and oh well, this
Like,
gross invasion of privacy is not a feature. And they're like, we swear it's going to stay on your PC and it's going to be encrypted. But again, as we all know, endpoint encryption is only effective if the machine is off. Once you're on and logged in, it doesn't matter. It's read up into memory and it's accessible. It's not encrypted anymore.
from like a search from a unreasonable search perspective, also
Right.
like having the ability to like subpoena someone's entire computer history going back
Right.
through everything they've ever done seems like
Yep.
a really big overreach potentially, as well as
Mm-hmm.
the thought of like the inevitable advertising and monetization of this. If that data source exists, you better believe that Microsoft or someone
Right.
else is going to analyze it in an attempt to sell you ads or optimize, your advertising experience by looking at what you do and how you spend your time on your computer. So,
Right.
of course, I'm sure they'll try to like anonymize that data, and of course, I'm sure someone on the other end will
Mm-hmm.
de-anonymize it, and then you'll have yet another source of like advertising data or personal data being leaked for profit. Or at least available to be leaked. And that's not even
Mm-hmm.
getting started on the threat actors. If somebody wanted to hack somebody else and they had access to this information in any way, shape, or form, this seems like an absolute nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So from everything from like people who are stalking their partner, who like
Right.
maybe have a shared computer, and then I'm going to go back
Yep.
through like everything that partner, like this is just, I can, on every front I can think of, it's like blind to like real world
Right.
concerns. So I think like a lot of people are maybe not so excited about this feature, and you can see that you can see that reflected in the chat. Although, hey, never mind. We have a supporter. Yeah, it is really cool. What a great feature. So yeah, most people absolutely hate this. The clamor to bring useful AI to everything is in some ways trampling on some other things
Mhm.
that I thought we all decided on. Like, we don't want like a constant recorder of our computer, even if it means we can go back and look at what we were doing, let alone like one that's like parsing information from it and potentially sending it back to somebody else. So we don't want it. Send it back, / kill it with fire has been the reaction from the community. We will still see whether or not it gets rolled out. Sometimes these things have been stopped. I believe that was the when Apple was proposing doing like client-side scanning of encrypted messages.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, absolutely not. And they dropped it.
Mhm.
So maybe if the reaction is visceral enough on this one too, they also will not do that. But I agree with
Mhm.
with this guy. Future data breaches are gonna be wild. All right, next up. So this is an interesting look into the, I guess, like hardware or like software networks that hackers use, especially nation state hackers use in order to stay anonymous. This is no longer just like a proxy or like a VPN anymore. This is
Yeah.
now like a criminal enterprise where people will breach huge amounts of routers and servers and things and stitch them together into sophisticated private for sale networks for criminals
Hmm.
to use. And the advantage here is you can bring your own sophisticated routing. You can make it look like you're close to a victim and have the ability to pop out of like a residential router or something like very close to the area that you're targeting. This has been used extensively by Chinese linked state hackers to be able to hack businesses in other places. And this sort of level of sophistication is at least kind of new to me anyway, when it comes to how much these private networks allow you to do and how just blatantly illegal they are. They're also super difficult to take down because the threat actors are constantly rotating through hijacked, stolen, or compromised
Hmm.
servers. So every time you take one down, they just start implementing new ones. And the idea here is that you're bouncing things off so many layers of infrastructure with so many levels of obfuscation that it's incredibly hard to trace anything. And of course, they don't respond to subpoenas. And once you shut one down, another
Right.
one pops right back up. So some of these have been targeted with law enforcement actions. And I think we might actually cover that in another story. But the
Hmm.
reason why law enforcement is getting so serious about this is that these networks are now getting sophisticated. They're really getting to the point where criminals are able to buy access to just about anywhere in terms of looking like a unflagged internet user that's incredibly difficult to detect. So this level of sophistication is just extremely interesting to
Yeah.
see. And again, if you see why government agencies are adopting real like strict policies going after these groups, it's because they're enabling so many ransomware actors. They're enabling like cybercrime and
Hmm.
also nation state actors that are going after, for example, critical infrastructure, which really makes governments mad. So here is, I think this is not that confusing.
No, it's
It's
pretty
my
good.
yeah, it's my week nomination for confusing graph of the week. So far, I don't know like what's these servers that are just watching everything are doing, or like why they're in the graph. But I think I understand just about everything else. But yeah, so this is absolutely something that you should be aware of if you're wondering like how sophisticated threat actors manage to connect to things on the internet without getting caught, then burning tons and tons and tons of random people's routers while attacking,
Hmm.
corporations and stuff. Like that's kind of how this works because these networks stitch together a lot of compromised devices and allow threat actors to pop out of tons of weird and unexpected places. All right. The Northern Ireland police are facing a $750,000 fine, which they have apparently accepted after exposing their staff's information on the internet. That includes the surnames, initials, ranks, roles, and locations of police officers, including undercover police officers. And this caused
Hmm.
apparently some people to have to either move or change
Yep.
their routes and routines in order to avoid being discovered / harassed / compromised in their investigations. Um, this fine is much lower than the normal figure, which is apparently 5.6 million, taking into consideration that they're a public organization and they have a finite budget. But yeah, so
And
kind of a relatively low fine, honestly,
th-
based on the
right.
amounts that were proposed typically.
The funny thing is, or not the funny thing is, the interesting thing is, I believe the information got accidentally leaked because they were actually, it's right there. It's in the middle of the paragraph. They were fulfilling a freedom of information request, and when they exported the data, apparently it had like extra tabs in the Excel or something that they didn't realize were there, and they just published it like online. Um, so it's not funny, but like it's this is an interesting byproduct of like fulfilling a different legal request.
It is. Okay, so this is a confirmed supply chain attack, not a suspected one. And this one I think is crazy. The Jobs, whatever, courtroom recording software was apparently backdoored in a supply chain attack.
Hmm.
And this means that up to 10,000 installations in courtrooms, legal offices, and correctional facilities could potentially have been backdoored. So they have removed the compromised version from its official website, but it was apparently contains a malicious ffmpeg.exe binary, which did not originate from them and any third party associated with them. They conducted full audit of their systems, reset all passwords, but it's kind of on customers to make sure that they remediate the situation. So the fact that so many of these potentially need to be re-imaged is going to be disruptive for these sorts of systems. I'm not, maybe something's changed, but I don't know like the court system for being particularly tech savvy, or like the, the correctional facilities for having like exceptional IT support. So having the sort of very impactful backdoor could mean a lot of very, very sensitive information being exfiltrated if it doesn't get handled promptly. And my worry is that, like if your recording system is backdoored, like that might not be the very top of your list of things to fix in something like in an environment like that. But who knows? I guess we'll see. Either way, anytime we see a supply chain attack, especially when the victims are like government agencies, like that is certainly something to keep an eye on. All right, so this is a short one. Microsoft Copilot was offline for 24 hours. So if you're feeling lonely because your little Copilot was gone, apparently it was an internal communication issue between calling different services. Everything went down, and DuckDuckGo apparently was the first to come back up. Everything is fine now, and it was not an attack. So that's all I got to say about that.
Right.
So I tolerate this story because I think that spyware people are terrible. And while I don't necessarily support defacing anything without permission, I will say if anything was to be defaced, then PCTattletale.com or whatever their website was, it's probably pretty high on my list. Notorious for leaking information from the booking systems of several hotels in the United States and exposing like the information of people who are staying at that hotels. This spyware was basically misconfigured and made it possible for people to access the information of the victims that was being exported. And that is obviously a concern. Several security researchers had reported that there were many problems with this and had reached out to the supplier trying to get them to fix it. And they didn't care. It just continued to leak this information. So this was built as an employee and child monitoring software. It's consumer grade spyware, which is when we talk about the kind of trickle of weaponization of code. First, we have like nation state, like 0-click exploits. And then when those kind of start getting like less relevant and patches come out, it'll trickle down until we get something like this, which is generic consumer grade spyware that maybe needs a little bit more permissions to be installed, but does all the things you would expect spyware to do. This is the creator of PC Tattletale talking about how it's spyware and how you should put it on your computer to watch your kids. And it says that watches what you do with your PC, usually by recording your keystrokes or screen images. Just like a certain Microsoft feature that's being installed. Maybe they should call it Microsoft Tattletale. All right, so what happened here was after repeatedly warning about there being flaws, or repeatedly being warned about there being flaws here by multiple security researchers, somebody eventually decided to deface the website and dump the database. So that means that I would love it when people who like commit crimes like comment directly to Bleeping Computer. That's why I love Bleeping Computer as a news organization, because like they're the only like place that everybody trusts to just like gab. So they breached video. The people who breached the site shared a video what they claim is the website owner trying to restore the site via FTP. Ironically, the video was allegedly taken through PC Tattletale software, which is installed on the owner's own device.
This is horrible, but this is like, this is such poetic justice. This is amazing.
Threat actor just sitting there watching the guy try to fix the website, like using his own misconfigured spyware tool to watch him. So I have been crying all morning about the fate of PC Tattletale. It is truly a sad thing to see such a wonderful company experience defacement and breach. Very, very sad. The one thing I will say is anybody who has had the spyware put on their computer, having your data breached is not a good thing. And I would say to the threat actor, maybe don't do that part. But as for the website going down, I think the website probably should stay down. And it seems like the threat actor agrees as it continues to be down. Troy Hunt has updated Have I Been Pwned with information. including data from the 100 gigabytes that has been leaked from PC
Wow.
Tattletale. That includes device info, MD5 hash passwords. That's not good. And SMS text for 139,000 unique email addresses. Of these emails, approximately 58% were already in the data breach notification service. That is pretty remarkable, though, that many new entries were made. So this is a big deal. And again, like, so much information was both stolen, poorly secured, and then dumped on the internet that you're definitely gonna potentially get some have I been pwned updates, especially if you've stayed at like one of these hotels that had this installed on their computers. Really sad. Kilian, ICQ Messenger shutting down after 28 years. Ugh.
This was some early day stuff. I remember this.
Yeah, so prior to AOL Instant Messenger, which arguably was my favorite messenger, there was ICQ, and this continued to be popular until apparently now. So a lot of people are very sad about this, and it's going to be stop working on June 26th. They're saying that you can switch to VK Messenger, which I've heard touted as an alternative, but man, like, ICQ has been around forever. It's just like it's like the ocean. You expect it to always be there. So ICQ didn't share any details about why they're shutting down. And it's not immediately clear like what is happening here, but it's the end of a software that a lot of people use to communicate with people for maybe their first time on the internet. And yeah, I think a lot of people miss it. All right, so this is a pretty short story. An Indian man decided to make a fake Coinbase Pro site after Coinbase stopped offering Coinbase Pro or integrated it into another part of their business. So when they stopped having that website available, this guy just started making them. And the idea here was to allure people to a coinbasepro.com domain, which was either no longer in use or was similar enough to a legitimate Coinbase website that Coinbase customers thought this was Coinbase Pro. So this is a now defunct platform designed for professional cybersecurity cryptocurrency traders and investors, offering advanced features like real-time order books and detailed charting. So this guy just made a website that looked like this service that they wound down, and then relied on people not having gotten the memo that the service wound down.
Right.
And that was it. And based on that genius plan, he stole $37 million in funny crypto money just by getting people to log into this fake website. So crypto crime always astounds me. And the fact that you could just take a service that was wound down and rely on people's bad memory or just, again, not getting the notification that it's no longer an option, pretty incredible. All right, we've got some more to go through, so we'll try to get through them. I'm going to skip this one. This one is the real tragedy. If any of you are watching on YouTube with ad blockers enabled, a lot of people are reporting that videos are now skipping to the end or muting and making them absolutely unwatchable. This is the latest escalation in the war between YouTube and people who just want to not get bothered while listening to some chill jazz. So if you don't want to pay Google and you also want to be able to watch videos without advertising, then this is going to make things a lot harder. I believe that this article mentions uBlock Origin is still working, and I have not been able to do any testing because I have YouTube Pro automatically from something else I bought and did not ask for it, but haven't noticed this issue. But you can expect that YouTube is going to continue to crack down on ad blockers as a result of their push to try to limit the number of people that are watching YouTube without advertising. I hate advertising and now am shocked by it every time I confront it. So I'm not sure how much I'll enjoy that, but I guess we will see.
Just a quick aside. I know we're hustling through these. I'm okay being called Heisenberg. That's fine with me. And we do read the comments. You can call me Heisenberg. That's fine. I'll switch up my alias.
Badass too. That's quite that's great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Let's see.
I know we're running a little bit long because we had a couple extra stories. So we apologize for not interacting as much as we typically do.
Yeah, so we have also a Russian man indicted for selling access to U.S. corporate networks. Pretty unlikely he'll be arrested, as he's probably curbed any travel plans to the United States based on this indictment. But he was indicted for wire fraud for allegedly acting as an initial access broker. So initial access brokers are, as we've said before, specialists who get into a business, via phishing or some other means, and then immediately turn around and sell that access to someone who's more serious and wants to do something really bad, like a ransomware affiliate gang or something like that. These initial access brokers expose themselves to some of the risk, but mitigate the really dangerous part where they're actually in direct negotiations with the business and the damage has been done. These smaller computer crimes typically don't carry as severe of a penalty, and they're often more attractive for people who are interested in breaching accounts, but not so interested in holding the bag after a giant ransomware event that maybe targeted a hospital or a water facility. So this has been an increasingly popular role in the cybercrime ecosystem. And because this particular threat actor is based in Russia, it's pretty unlikely that they will actually be able to do anything about it.
It's funny too, just as a brief aside, we've had a couple stories now just really looking at the various stages of the criminal ecosystem, the initial access brokers, the people running and reselling the different routing networks to hide your tracks. And I know in previous ones we've talked about crypto mixers and other things to launder some of that money. It's even in just the last few years that we've seen the evolution and the corporatization, if that's even a word, of these different criminal enterprises, and they're all doing their little part. It's interesting to see the change of versus a couple years ago, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, the smash and grab ransomwares where somebody clicked something and wiped out your PC, to this kind of large scale commodity type of offering.
Yeah, it really has gotten very niche, and it's made it to the point where like somebody can really specialize on one specific thing and still make a ton of money, provided they have a network of other people that know how to monetize it. All right. We're gonna go to the piano phishing scheme. So if any of you are university students and you've gotten an email saying that you have won a free piano, a baby grand piano to be specific, this unfortunately is a scam, and the originators of the scam appear to be potentially based in Nigeria, based on IP addresses involved in this, and which makes it even less likely that you're really going to get this piano. So what seems to be happening is you get an email that tells you that you are now in the running to get a baby grand piano. It's a Yamaha baby grand, used like new. You can write to him with your interest in this private email to arrange an inspection delivery with the moving company. So then the actual scam is the moving company. This imaginary piano has to come to you, and you have to negotiate with some random moving company, American Van Lens Movers Services, and they will basically extort you for whatever amount of money you're willing to put up. And there will be delays, there will be inspections and all this other stuff that has to happen that ends up making the cost go from a small amount to a very large amount. So once they get you in at an amount where you're comfortable, they'll continue to take as much as they can. And apparently the threat actor here has made about $900,000 by extorting university students and other piano aficionados who have been willing to put up the big bucks to potentially get a baby grand. So if you get any sort of communication about this, just be aware. For one, baby grand pianos don't fall out of the sky. And if they do, then you would probably be killed. Do not accept any sort of thing that is of great value and is free, but involves like a mover or shipping cost. When it comes to these sorts of like phishing scams, they happen all the time. And in particular, these ones are very durable because you can have any object of value and then just make the shipping the part where they manage to extract information or money from you. So be careful. So another way that people are getting infected is by information on StackOverflow. And I think this is kind of funny because there's a big controversy over whether or not like people want their responses in a lot of these like online forums included in AI models. So if people are just inserting like malicious Pipel repos into this, then it's actually kind of funny that by training LLMs on it, they might be internalizing and immortalizing these attacks where people posing as helpful StackOverflow users will instead just propose some sort of malicious package. And so in their example code, it'll just have an import to a specific library that looks like a normal library, but maybe is, like a little variant or like a misspelled version or something like that, that instead downloads the library that you want and also a backdoor. So this has been a super popular way of getting people to install backdoors. Often, like someone will upload a malicious pipe-hole repo, and then they'll get like
Mhm.
somebody to do like a coding exercise where that requires you to import this. So targeting people that are doing programming and getting you to import a malicious repo is absolutely something that threat actors want you to do. So keep your eye out for this. If you're looking on Stack Overflow, don't just copy and paste code samples, because some of them could include malicious imports that completely backdoor your code and your computer. All right, running through it, we've got 100 malware loader services also related to the proxy networks we were talking about earlier, have been seized as part of Operation Endgame. These are malware loader operations that have served ICE ID, Picabot, TrickBot, Bumblebee, SmokeLoader, and System BC. Typically, these are pieces of spyware and loaders that will take basically whatever people pay to be loaded onto victim computers. So if you're a malware developer and you want to create an initial pool of infection, you can basically pay one of these loaders to load the malware onto an infected device. And these loader servers are a critical part of that operation. So having them be seized is obviously a step in the right direction. It makes it harder for these organizations to monetize their access to computers with spyware by loading, whatever their malicious customers want to put on them. Almost done, almost done. So we've got a big breach at the BBC. This is impacting current and former employees. This includes full names, national insurance numbers, date of birth, sex, and home addresses. That is hard to change. You can change your password, but your home address is quite expensive to change. So this was apparently impacting a good amount of information, but did not involve the pension scheme portal, which is apparently safe to continue using. But there's no specific information. There's no specific action for affected members to take. But it is a lot of sensitive information to be breached, and a lot of sensitive people potentially impacted by this, being as they have a public role or they may work at a media company.
I can't remember what the exact issue was. I think it might have been like a misconfigured like bucket or something like that, where it was just out there. I don't remember this one positively, but so common this happens that something gets exposed publicly like this, and boom, this is what you have.
All right, this is our second to last. We're going to breeze through it. Mysteriously, 600,000 routers were bricked in a 2023 attack against a specific American telecommunication company. Now, what was interesting here is that so many routers were taken offline that it caused a lot of disruption in a relatively localized area. So we know like our ISP will typically select a type of routers and a configuration, and that will allow them to like push out a whole bunch of routers that are all pretty standardized and manage them. In this case, it looked like something was wrong with that configuration, and it allowed somebody, we don't know who, to brick 600,000 of them all at the same time. Now that caused a lot of problems, and there was apparently a 49% reduction in operating modems due to the quote pumpkin eclipse incident. And I'm guessing this had to do with oh yes, of course, it started on October 25th. So during the pumpkin eclipse incident, it took down a ton of routers and just general connectivity within the Midwest. And while the incident was not persistent, you could unplug or re-image the routers, and when they booted back up, it was no longer affected. It was a demo of how this sort of incident can affect a large geographical area just based on the dominance of a particular ISP. And last up, a little teeny tiny incident with Ticketmaster where their customer information is for sale after an alleged breach. And this is a ton of information because Ticketmaster has an almost monopoly on the, I guess it's to be determined based on a legal proceeding, a monopoly on the US ticket market. This sort of data breach is a big deal as it just has a voluminous amount of information, including credit card information, which is, terrible.
From 2012 to 2024. So freaking everybody in probably the US who's seen some concert probably is affected. Millions of people are going to be. This is wonderful.
Unless you're a dirtbag like me that makes your friends buy the tickets. So I may, for once, be not in this data breach, but if we're playing who's getting free credit monitoring, it's 560 million American.
Yeah.
Is that might be all of us? Yeah. So this, as I said, could actually be related to this other incident we're talking today, which is absolutely not the one that I just clicked on. There we go. So it could actually be related to the Snowflake account breach. We're going to take a look and see as details come out. I'll be looking more into this today, but definitely keeping an eye on this as it is probably has the potential to be the biggest story of this week. So that is all we've got time for today. Kilian, thank you for joining us again. A lot to talk about, and I know with like travel and everything, I think I wasn't able to go live last week because, because of layer one. So if you guys want to keep the stream going, Kilian, get back here. Sorry, equality. There we go. So if you want to keep the stream going, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody. Every time you go, it lets the people of Varonis know that you love the stream. You want us to keep going twice a week, every week. And also you can check out our great Copilot lab that shows you all about how to both set up Copilot correctly and all the terrible things that could happen if you don't. So we talked a little bit about data exfiltration, finding exposed data. Well, that works both ways. Copilot can both do it, find the data, but also accidentally expose it. So if you want to check out a great lab on how to do that, then varonis.com/Kody, that's Kody, both supports the stream and will teach you a little bit about securing your AI. All right, that's all we've got for today. Thank you, Kilian, and everybody in the stream. We had so much to get through, so I'm sorry I was only able to answer one question. But hey, check us out on the Wednesday stream where we'll answer all of your questions. And if you want to leave a comment on the YouTube video, I'll make sure it gets answered on Wednesday as well. So all right, everyone, have a good weekend. See you next time. Bye.